Hey everyone, Mr. Macintosh here, and this week Apple released the macOS Sequoia 15.1.1 update. In this video, we're going to test that update against OpenCore Legacy Patcher for unsupported Macs in the latest version 2.1.2. We are going to test the update against 13 separate Mac models so we can make sure that we can cover as many situations as possible so you can be sure that before you update your Mac to the latest version that things will be going okay. You're going to want to stick around for this one. Let's jump in and get started. First off, before we get into some of the testing in the machines, I like to go over what's in the 15.1.1 update so you are aware of what even this update includes. Now, if you haven't watched my 15.1.1 update video, we can quickly go over that. So this update is primarily for security fixes. Before we get into those security updates, I want to make sure that we're very clear on something, and if you haven't seen me talk about this before, for OpenCore Legacy Patcher Macs, I want to make sure that you turn off automatic updates. Because what we've seen happen here before is if the automatic updates are enabled in here, click on the automatic updates eye in the circle here, make sure this is selected off. Because what happens is when the brand new update version comes out, then the way the new updates install, they don't just download. The problem is the operating system actually prepares the update, and what it does is it slightly modifies the system, and at that time it thinks that it's getting prepared for an update. So if you try to update OpenCore Legacy Patcher, let's say a new version comes out tomorrow, 2.1.3, and you try to install the root patches, it's going to say you can't install these root patches. The patcher is expecting 15.1.1, and maybe you've already downloaded 15.1.2 and it's like staged, and you're currently on 15.1.1. And I put out a video on that if you ever get into that situation, called the OpenCore Legacy Patcher System Version PLS Build Version Mismatch Error. And this video kind of gives you a quick overview of how to get out of that situation if you ever get into that. So again, I wanted to make sure that if you haven't heard me talk about that, make sure you turn that off, because the other problem is on brand new systems, this is enabled by default, and you can really get caught up into a big problem if you do not turn this off. With that said, you do have to check manually then and see if someone's available. So all you need to do is go into General and then go into Software Update. It'll automatically check for itself. This Mac Pro is already at the latest release of 15.1.1, so it's already good to go. But back to the security updates here, there's two big ones, and this has already hit the tech press on the issues that are currently dealing with. It is a JavaScript core and a WebKit, and these are both Safari-based 0 days. And what is a 0 day? A 0 day is a security vulnerability that has been already exploited in the wild by threat actors, and Apple didn't know about it. So Apple found out about it and then patched it. But usually the way it works is a good security researcher that is working with Apple will let them know first about something that they found. Then they can patch it. Then they can put out the security update before that vulnerability was ever exploited in the wild. So when it's a 0 day, that means it's a very important update. And that's why Apple released 15.1.1 instead of waiting until 15.2, which it could be coming in only 2 weeks. That's why it's a very important update. And OpenCore Legacy Patcher can protect your Mac against these vulnerabilities, because all we need to do is install 15.1.1 and you are now protected against these two here. If you're on macOS Sonoma, you need to install the latest version of Safari. You can see my Safari manual download database here. I've got the Safari 18.1.1 Sonoma and the 18.1.1 for Ventura. So if you are on one of those previous operating systems and OpenCore Legacy Patcher, just go into Software Update and you'll see Safari 18.1.1. I 100% recommend installing that on your unsupported Mac on these two OS versions to make sure you're fully protected. But that's why we're here on macOS Sequoia, because Apple includes the latest Safari updates inside macOS Sequoia and does not separate those out as a separate Safari update. That's one thing to keep in mind. Now also, a lot of people were talking about what happened with the rapid security response updates, RSRs. Apple has not put an RSR out since macOS Ventura, so I don't know what they're doing with that, even though they're listing it on their security update page. But this could have been an RSR. I even talked to Mikola about this. He's like, oh yeah, he's one of the leading experts who did a lot of research on the rapid security response update and said this could have been one, and I don't know why they're not doing it. And it's too bad, because I like the RSR, and I can show you that page. Here I went and I built this whole database because I figured there was going to be a lot of RSRs, but you can see the last time there was the RSR from July 12th, 2023 at 13.4.1. and this was went to C. And I like these because you can actually uninstall them, and if something goes wrong, you can just revert back. And unfortunately, there's no way to do that with any current Apple updates right now. So that gives you a kind of a quick overview of what is included in the macOS Sequoia 15.1.1 update. The next section is the latest update, 15.1.1, supported by OpenCore Legacy Patcher 2.1.2. And yes, it is. There is no reported issues from the Discord or from the GitHub. And usually if there is, there's a big message here if there's any kind of a problem with the update that's reported in to the developers. From now, what we've seen, and I've looked on Discord and some other areas like the Reddit, OpenCore Legacy Patcher, I haven't seen anything major. And all my testing haven't seen anything major either. One thing I wanted to cover, though, is the fact that one of the previous fixes is that the Create USB Media under here was showing the Apple Silicon version. And what's weird about the 15.1.1 update is Apple released an Apple Silicon version for M4s. So when we go in here, that's all fixed. And I talked to Nicole about this, and he shared how he was able to do this. When we click on the download macOS installer, we're not going to see any more of the Apple Silicon version because it only looks for x86 installers now. So we'll only see the versions that are applicable to Intel devices in OpenCore Legacy Patcher. So there it is, our 15.1.1 24B91. The 2091 is for the M4. So that's really great that that's fixed. The next thing I wanted to talk about was my recommendation for operating system versions and what you should install. A lot of people are asking about this. What version should I install on my unsupported Mac? Well, after installing like a ton of times on these, you start to get a feel of what models can really run the operating system, like Sequoia, better than others. And I see a real pretty clear split at around 2011. This, in my opinion, is just about the last year that you can go and still get some decent performance out of macOS Sequoia. I'm not saying that you can't have a powerhouse, right? You could have, for example, a upgraded tilted out iMac, the 2011 i7. But in 2010 and below, when you start getting into some of the Core 2 Duos, I'm telling you right now, the performance is starting to drop off. It's still usable. That's why I test all the way back to the 15-inch MacBook Pro late 2008. It still works, but you can definitely see it's struggling in certain situations. And keep in mind, I don't even use, there's no way I would use a spinning hard drive in any of these devices, okay? I 100% recommend, don't even try to do the upgrade on a spinning hard drive. If you want to test it out, be my guest. I'm not saying you can't. All I'm saying is that don't let that be the experience. And you're like, wow, OpenCore doesn't run very well. Well, you're running it on a 5400 spinning RPM drive that's very, very slow. Heck, it was slow back when it came out, right? So with the new SSDs and maybe 8 gigabytes of RAM, you get a pretty good experience. So that's why I wanted to give a quick overview of some of the recommendations right now at about 15.1.1 in the release cycle. Remember, Sequoia's only been out for about 2 months so far. There's still a lot of fixes and improvements to the operating system that need to be done, and it could change a little bit later. But for these older devices here, I recommend Ventura, Big Sur, or macOS Sonoma. Those run a little bit better on those older systems compared to macOS Sequoia. Let me know, though, in the comments how your system's running on macOS Sequoia if you've updated it. Maybe you're running a lot better. Maybe you went to Sequoia and it's starting to be a little bit slow, and you're like, you know what, I got to go back down to one of the previous versions. Let me know. I'm really curious to know your situation. Let's look at a quick preliminary report here. And again, I mentioned in the last video, I'm still trying to work on getting a better reporting system on doing testing against these Macs, following the feedback that you've been giving me in the comments. And a lot of the stuff revolves around some of the photo apps and some of the music app activities. I saw some of the comments saying a lot of the parts in the music app work until, like, for example, you do a custom playlist and then it crashes. Same thing with the Photos app. Let me know in the comments what is going on with photos and music, if you're having any issues, or any other mainline apps that you're having problems with. But I tested some people were saying we were having problems with the built-in webcam. I tested that across the board, all the way back to the 2008 MacBook Pro. It's working great. I tested that in Photo Booth. If you're having any issues with, for example, WebEx or Zoom, let me know so I can test it against those. I want to make sure that we're covering some of the bases here. Remote desktop is working, except all the way back to non-metal does not work anymore. I did mention this to Mikola, but it's kind of a low priority, and that's totally fine. The fact, here I was talking in the previous section about Sequoia not running too well on some of the older Core 2 Duo Macs. I mean, the fact that it even runs at all on a 2008 MacBook Pro is amazing. So I want to make that clear. I just want to give just a real world experience on what to expect. That's what I was trying to get across in the previous section. So yes, it works just fine with all metal-based Macs, and even on the 2010 Mac Pro with an upgraded metal card that works. So again, just non-metal doesn't work. I do test awake sleep. I put it to sleep on the laptop, making sure it fully goes to sleep, and that's been working okay. Now the Wi-Fi, I'm having connectivity issues with the 2011 stock Wi-Fi card. And what happens is the machine comes up and it will continually search for it, and I'll have to manually connect it. So I got to look into that. If you got a 2011 iMac, let me know in the comments if you're having these same problems in Sequoia, because I'm not having them when I reboot into Sonoma. And that's why all these Macs in this list are dual boot, every single one of them. What I can do is, if I'm having an issue, I just boot directly into macOS Sonoma, and a lot of times the issue is fine. For example, the screen sharing and remote desktop works on non-metal on macOS Sonoma. So that gives me an idea that, oh, this is not just hardware based. This is not maybe a problem with the machine itself. It's with the operating system version. So that gives us a quick overview. The next thing I wanted to talk about was, after installing a macOS update and it reboots, you'll see the progress bar and you'll see the timer remaining, and it comes back up after the final reboot. It will come up to a black screen. And at that point, none of the root patches are installed for graphics acceleration, Wi-Fi, and all that stuff. But it's in a different state at that point. And what I mean by that is that it's extremely slow, especially going all the way back. The farther older you get, the slower that machine is at that login window. Sometimes the login window will crash, but this is all black, and you'll just see your login screen right here, and you're wondering what the heck's going on here. I can't even log in. This is taking forever. What I do a lot of the times, I'll just power the system off or shut it down if I can. When it comes back up the second time, the state that it's in is a lot better. For example, you actually see a background and the performance is a little bit better. I don't necessarily know why it's in that state, but when you reboot that first time, it's a lot quicker, and you can log in and you can have it better. So don't feel bad about shutting it down or powering it down and bringing it back up. And then you'll see the pop-up to be able to install the root patches, and it'll go a lot more smoother. So I wanted to definitely mention that piece. As we were talking, I want to get back to this list because I forgot to add a couple of things. I wanted to add in the T1 touch bar to make sure the touch bar is working okay. And I wanted to put on Touch ID because with this update, the fingerprint was reset. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that, but as long as you add it back, it still does work okay. And I remember there was a couple of users in the comments talking about the TV app. So let me know about these apps again, and we'll go from there. Now let's take a look at some of our test machines. Our first one is our newest one, our 15-inch 2017. And that reminds me, I had a couple comments asking about the current status of macOS Sequoia OpenCore Legacy Patcher and the 2018 and 2019 MacBook Air that was dropped for Sequoia. Actually, these are the only models that were dropped. And unfortunately, because those are the T2 security chip models, those are going to take some work. So we're going to have to wait for the long haul. Now, there could be a breakthrough on those guys, but those are currently a work in progress. Now back to our T1 2017. We're on 15.1.1 and 2.1.2. We have the AMD Polaris graphics card drivers and the modern wireless and the T1 security chip. I mentioned earlier that on this particular update, for some reason, the fingerprint got blown away. So at the login window, I was greeted with the fact that I needed to set up the fingerprint again. It wouldn't let me. I had to go back into the system settings, and then I had to click on Touch ID down here at the bottom, and then I had to reset and add the fingerprint again. Not the end of the world, but it is something that I wanted to mention. That's why we test these machines. So if you see yours go away, that's definitely matching my situation here. Definitely did get the kernel debug kit for 15.1.1. If we look in the kernel debug kit folder, there it is right here on 24B91, and everything is running A-OK on this 2017 MacBook Pro. Next up is our 2016 little 12-inch MacBook. I love this little guy. It is a nice little machine. We are basically running a 1.1 dual-core Intel M3, so it's a little bit pokey on the processor side because there's no fan and it does throttle, but it's still a great little device. We are running 15.1.1, 2.1.2, and we also have our Intel Skylake modern wireless and our PCIe FaceTime camera. We did need the Intel Skylake graphics extension, and we can see that in our library extensions folder, the graphics kits here that are installed that the system needs, and everything is running A-OK on this little 12-inch MacBook Retina. Next up is our big 27-inch 5K iMac from 2015, 3.2 quad-core Intel i5 with a Radeon R9, 2 gigabytes graphics card, and 16 gigs of RAM. We're running 15.1.1 and 2.1.2. We did get the new KDK 24B91. We're running Intel Skylake AMD Legacy GCN, and we have modern wireless patches. We did get that KDK here. As you can see, it was installed just fine, and there is no issues on this iMac. Next up is our mid 2014 15-inch Retina MacBook Pro. Now this is a little bit different than those previous machines because this one gave me some problems and I want to talk to you about it. And the first thing is I could not get this thing for the life of me to properly show software update. It would clock and clock and clock, and then it would show and I couldn't click the button. So if you have a 2013 or 2014 15-inch Retina, let me know if you're having any issues trying to get software update to show properly. I was trying to figure out if this is just my configuration, my machine, or what. I rebuilt this thing tonight from scratch, brand spanking new, erase and reinstall, and it was still giving me problems, and I had to run the dang update from terminal. So I'm not sure what the heck's going on here, but again, let me know in the comments if any late 2013, mid 2014 Retina 15-inch MacBook Pro, if you guys are having any issues. I don't know what the heck's going on there. But after I rebuilt this, I was able to update it to 15.1.1 from 15 because I want to make sure that I capture the update process, and I did that. And you can see here what running in the latest version and on 2.1.2. The next thing is that one of the reasons why I picked this model is because it's a Kepler based machine and it needs the new MetallibSupport package. If you haven't heard me talk about that, that's kind of like the kernel debug kit that's required for AMD based machines. But for certain models, and I'll put all the model lists down in the description of this video, from 2012 to around 2014, some of these machines need this. It needs to be able to pull it from the GitHub, the OpenCore Legacy Patcher. When I talked about this earlier, these machines weren't even working at all. The fact that they came up with a solution to be able to use the IPSW from the M1 side to be able to create this patch is absolutely amazing. But it relies on this package to be able to get things working. Now you might notice something real quick here. We're in the Sequoia Library Application Support Titania folder, MetallibSupport package, and you only see 15.1 in here. I talked to Makola about this, and the good thing is that it's pretty compatible with maybe one or two previous versions. So we're running 15.1.1, but 15.1 is running fine. The only problem is that it seems to not be able to get that MetallibSupport package when it goes calling for it. And I'll show you that now. So we are on the latest version, and if we click on install post-root patches, it's saying we're good to go on 2.1.2 and all the applicable patches are already installed. But watch what happens here once we have our network. If we're not connected to Ethernet, when we're doing the root patches and the system doesn't recognize that an update's being installed or something doesn't work right, where it pulls down, and this is what it'll look like right here. This is where it was pulling down the previous version, 24B83. It did not pull down the version here. Now, what makes things even more confusing is there was a problem yesterday with that metal support package being built because Apple didn't even upload the decryption keys for the IPSW. So those builds on the build server failed. And thanks, McCullough, again. I'm telling you, this guy is answering questions for you guys in this audience. He is top notch, I'm telling you. And I thanked him time over time. Thank you for answering all these questions so I can share it with you guys, right? So that build failed, and because it couldn't build the IPSW, and basically any Apple Silicon device could not rebuild with Apple Configurator 2 with that IPSW at all. All yesterday. It was just completely done because of those decryption keys. That also broke this whole package here. So if you tried to update during that time, you weren't even going to get that either. Now let me show you where that site is. This is the site, and I'll put this in the description of this video, the Metal Support Package site where it gets all of these builds. And that's why you see this build right here. This is the one we need, the 24B91 yesterday. And that just built late yesterday to be able to get done. Now, in the nighttime, 9 o'clock p.m. McCullough said this always checks every 4 hours. So if it finds an update, it'll run out there and it'll build this. But if it can't build it until 9 o'clock like last night, you were trying to install, you weren't going to be getting this. Again, I know I'm getting in the weeds, but I would rather you guys understand how this is working in case you're having issues with your machine, right? So if we click on Start Root Patching Now, it's going to check, and it can actually find it now. And now it's downloading it, and it's going to be able to patch with the 24B91 metal, and there it is right here. And now it's going to patch with that latest one, and you can see that the MetallLib is already installed with 15.1.1, and it's going to patch with that. And you can see you actually saw all of the extensions get cleared out. It's going to rebuild them, put them in again, and the system will be rebooted with the latest 15.1.1. The system can run just fine on previous release 15.1 because let's be honest, there wasn't that many changes in this update. But if there was and you were having issues, you can run that again if you don't see the latest version in here. That gives you a quick overview. We'll let this thing finish here, and then we will move on to the next machine. It is finished with the latest patch. We're going to click on reboot and restart. All right, we are back up, and we can see all of our extensions are back here in the library extensions folder. And of course, as we saw, we've got our MetallLib support package and application support titanium MetallLib support package with 15.1.1. So we are good to go on this 2014 mid 15-inch Retina MacBook Pro. Next up is our trash can late 2013 Mac Pro. What's funny about this guy is that when it first came out, I actually hated the damn thing. And the reason why, it was nothing against the computer itself, because of my beloved cheese grater Mac Pro was gone forever. And at the time, a lot of people said, even though the design and everything, whatever, you could put it in your backpack and go, and it had all the latest and greatest connections and stuff like that. All we wanted was that same stuff in the big tower, so we can expand it and do whatever we want. And Apple finally figured that out, and for the first time, they actually admitted that they made a mistake with the thing later, which is a very rare event. But now that I've got one, and I've always wanted one, and now that the prices are unbelievably low, so if you ever wanted to buy one, now's the time. You could get one for like 150 bucks, which is crazy. These things are just like $1,000 not even a year ago. It's a great little machine. It works very well. It's pretty reliable. It's still relatively fast for an older Mac. And now I love the thing. Sorry for the little story there, but I just love the trash can Mac. And on 15.1.1, 2.1.2, this thing is running great. We did get the kernel debug kit 24B91, and we are running AMD Legacy GCN and modern wireless patches. And this box is our loving caching server. This bad boy has now cached across this entire network and 15 to 16 different machines, 186 gigabytes worth of macOS updates. So you can see this guy was working hard and was pushing out those updates across the entire network. And I've been promising you guys a caching server update video, and I promise you I'm gonna get to that. I just have been delayed on getting that out because it just runs absolutely fantastic and super fast. So that's our late 2013 Mac Pro. Next up is the most popular, and you've heard me talk about this in previous videos, Mac for OpenCore Legacy Patcher at about 9% of the take, which is a pretty big number. Mid 2012 13-inch MacBook Pro. This device was sold all the way up until 2016, which is crazy. It was sold as a lower cost educational device, and it had one of the last DVD burners and CD-ROMs in it. So it was a pretty popular device for kids in college and high school and school. It's still a great machine, and there's a ton out there, and it's super reliable. No issues whatsoever. You can still update the hard drive, update the RAM. It's a great little machine. We're running 15.1.1 and 2.1.2, and we have Intel Ivy Bridge patches and modern wireless. Now, this is also another MetallibSupport package machine, and you can see we have updated this machine from 15.01 to 15.1, and it does not have that 15.1.1 MetallibSupport package. As I said earlier, even though it doesn't, the system is still running very well with no issues. You want to get that latest one, just hit that post install root patches again. It will find that, and it will start to download, and it will be fully up to date with the MetallibSupport package there. We'll let that go, and we'll move on to the next machine. Next up is our Mac Mini. Late 2012, one of the oldest metal supported GPU devices that is in the fleet. We're running 15.1.1, 2.1.2, and we are running Intel Ivy Bridge graphics and modern wireless patches. And just like our other 9.2, this is another MetallibSupport package machine, library application support Tortania, and we need to get it updated with the latest 15.1.1. So all we'll do is go in here and run that post root patches. Again, it is connected and should be able to get those patches and get to the latest version. And there it goes. No issues on this little guy. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, everything is working a-okay, even on the previous version of MetallibSupport lib. Next up is the beast, our 2010 5.1 Mac Pro. We're running 15.1.1 on 2.1.2. For our graphics, we have our upgraded AMD Radeon Pro WX 4100 4GB, and that's metal compatible. We're also running modern wireless because we're running our updated Bluetooth and wireless card, and we're running legacy USB 1.1 patches. If you remember 2 updates ago, I was saying that I had some Bluetooth issues. Well, they're back again, so I really got to work on figuring out if that's a patcher issue or if that's my upgraded Bluetooth card. Again, I got to track that down. Again, I don't want to say that something's not working. I got to figure that out. It is not working properly, but the Wi-Fi is working a-okay, no issues whatsoever. This machine also got its KDK. It's 15.1.1, no issues there. This machine's running good otherwise. Now we're down to our non-metal machines. We've got our 2008 MacBook Pro. We've got our 2010 polycarbonate MacBook 13-inch, and we have our late 2011 iMac and our 17-inch late 2011. I can't connect to these machines. As I mentioned earlier in the video, the screen sharing is not working on non-metal Macs. Now I got to try to see if I can work on some sort of screen capture situation to be able to capture these devices, but until then, these are working well, other than that 2011 Wi-Fi issue for the iMac that I was talking about. I gotta track down that and figure out what's going on with that. Is that machine specific? But again, I made the call to check that out. If you're having that, let me know in the comments if you're having that same issue, and we'll try to track that down. Thanks for watching this video. I'd like to thank all the OpenCore Legacy Patcher developers for all the hard work that they put into the patcher. I would like to thank Macola for always answering my questions for you guys to be able to have all the latest knowledge. And let me know in the comments if I'm missing something when I'm doing these testing. I want to try to do the best that I can. You can see there's a lot involved with the testing, but I want to make sure that all the time that's being spent is being spent in the areas that you want to be able to see working properly. I wanted to make a shout out to all my Patreon members. I truly appreciate every single one of you, and make sure you check that out. I help a bunch of people in there, and when they have individual issues, feel free to check that out. And thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video. Thanks.